The Late Morning Program with Namarasa podcast.
Hare Krishna, you're listening to the Namarasa podcast, the number one Hare Krishna podcast in the world. I'm so honored to have Srila Rasikananda Maharaj with me. Maharaj, thank you so much for joining me.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Prabhu, and everybody. Glad to be with you tonight.
Thank you, Maharaj. So, Maharaj, we'll get straight into it. You recently took sannyas. How was that experience? What led to it? What did you decide? Because in this day and age, especially nowadays, the sannyas ashram is under fire, I feel like, because of just the misuse of the ashram in some ways and the bad examples that we've seen throughout the years. And so, I mean, for you, a young person to take sannyas is like a big statement. So tell us a little bit about how that's been.
Well, first, I just wanted to give my pranams to all the devotees watching, to everybody. All glories to our Guru Varga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Gurudev, all the Vaishnavas, Vaishnavis. Since I was a young boy, my Guru, Srila Bhakti Bandhav NY Maharaj, asked me to be a monk since I was 10, actually. Wow. I took initiation when I was 9 in Kartik and Vrindavan. And then I took Diksha when I was 10, and he asked me to be a brahmachari. He said, when you grow up, come live in the mat, be a brahmachari, serve Mahaprabhu's mission. So I grew up, he would regularly ask me that when I would meet him. And so when I was 18, I went to live in India. I lived there from 2005 to 2020, continuously as a brahmachari in the temple, serving. And then in 2020, my Shiksha Guru requested me, and at that time, Prem Pradeep Prabhu.
I miss Prem Pradeep Prabhu. We were here together before doing the podcast in that room over there. Yeah. So big shout out to Prem Pradeep Prabhu if you're listening.
He's serving in Vrindavan, in our temple there, Bhakta Bandhav NY.
Yeah.
So he asked us to come, and we came and started a ashram in New York and built a temple, established Sri Vigraha, hosted many festivals, built up the place, did a lot of preaching. And last year, 2022, in Kartik, I was requested to accept the vows of sannyas. Many people, oh, congratulations. For me, it's not so much different than what I was doing already, because I felt like my whole life I've been trying to serve and offer my life to my Gurudev and his service, following his instruction. It took time to come to accept that, and he gave freedom, free choice. But, sannyas wasn't something I chose. It was more like he chose it for me at a young age for whatever his reasons.
Yeah.
For me, the experience of sannyas was extremely powerful in terms of my internal spiritual life. Not so much the external vesh. I don't think cloth makes you particularly holy, but it also has significance in society in terms of helping guide people towards relationship with Krishna, with the Supreme Lord, and realization of your soul's nature. So it has its practical application, but really it's an internal path. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took sannyas to follow the footsteps of the Braja Gopis, who were one-pointed in seeking out Sri Krishna. So it's the idea of the journey of the soul, when you decide to be completely one-pointed in that journey of the soul to God, to Krishna. Then sannyas is recommended. Bhakti sannyas. We're not taking sannyas to renounce work, renounce duties. It's actually a twofold process. Primarily the internal path, the internal dedication. It said, Mahaprabhu quoted this verse, Mukunda Sevan Vrata, that when one takes a firm vow to serve Mukunda Krishna, nirdharan, without any deviation, without any mixture, then one takes sannyas. And it's an internal path. And the mantra in our sampradaya, coming from our Gaudiya Guru Varga, is a very profound mantra. And according to the level of one's guru, I believe there's a very powerful spiritual process of transformation. And the process of diksha, it's a form of diksha, birth, a rebirth. And I felt very honored to receive those sannyas mantras from very powerful saints. So it was very powerful.
When growing up in Krishna consciousness, your parents are devotees and everything, what are you doing differently as a sannyasi in 2023 as opposed to if you were taking it like, you know, maybe 30, 40 years ago? What are you doing differently when you see the experience of like others, if anything?
Like, what is the life of a sannyasi like compared to myself in young age? Or
yeah, like, or how do you live your life?
I grew up around, actually grew up around visiting sannyasis very often.
Yeah,
I remember as a kid I would play chess with them. As a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, and beat them sometimes. So I was, I grew up in a beautiful devotee community in Badger, California, New Braj.
Yeah,
very positive experiences, and life is, it's always, it is what it is. It's coming at you as it is. I don't think there's so much of a difference. I think it's just about what you do with the time that you have and how you serve. It's not so different. Obviously, now we have a lot more kind of engagement in the world through social media.
Yes.
And that's a huge difference. Before, we were all in a village. Now we're all in the great world village, and we have access to everything at once. So, but that being said, I believe a lot of that is pulling us to the external energy, Maya, not into Bhakti.
Like we were discussing earlier, that the currency nowadays is the social media, how much social media content you can put out to reach a certain amount of people. So as a sannyasi, especially in Gaudiya Vaishnava in the line of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, your goal as a sannyasi is to reach people and share Krishna consciousness with them. So how much are you engaging? Like you kind of alluded to it, but it is going towards more of the external energy when you talk about social media.
I'm personally trying my best to not be on social media, and it can be a seva for people. It's my service to speak, so I speak. I'll do TV or interviews or radio or Harikatha, and then assistants can help put it out. And I like to be pretty neutral about it, because ultimately I feel the purpose of sannyas is not to be in the external world. It's to develop the internal world and to practice sadhana, and then naturally to repeat the message of our gurus, our Sri Krishna. And so, on one hand, we're meant to preach, to share the message, but ultimately we're meant to leave this world. It's like, the more you look at it, the more it's distraction. It's not about leaving. It's not about escapism, but I would say there's a reality, and this is being represented at various layers online. And something, my Shiksha Guru in India tells us is that, was there no preaching before social media? Did Ramanujacharya not have a preaching mission? Did Madhvacharya, did Sankaracharya not have a preaching mission? Did Mahaprabhu not have a preaching mission? Bhaktisanta Prabhupada? So I believe there's a value of the real personal aspect of prachad, which is real human interaction, Shabda Brahma, and that can be represented online, but don't forget the actual physical realism of Nam Hatta and so forth.
Yeah, we saw that during COVID time, that everything became online, lectures, pravachans, sanghas, everything was online. And then now that it's kind of over, people are still kind of sticking to that. But you're saying that it's more important in person. You should have that in-person interaction, relationships.
Sadhu Sangha, means to be together with devotees, like-minded devotees, practicing bhakti, the limbs of bhakti, hearing, chanting, and so forth. So online is good. Nothing wrong with online. Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada would say use everything available at your means.
Right.
But it's described that real service to Mayapur, Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada said, is Nam Hatta Brihad Mridanga, book publishing and media. So that's Brihad Mridanga. But Nam Hatta means in person.
Mm-hmm.
I think we use the tools of the internet to help us feel more connected. And if they do that, then good.
Yeah. You're preaching in what you're doing right now. What are you focusing on when you spread Krishna consciousness with either, is it with devotees or was it with more focus on non-devotees? Tell us a little about like, what's your, I don't want to say strategy, but for lack of a better
I'm trying
word.
to go more towards the realm of people in society. And I find people to be often very religious in their different traditions. So one thing Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada said that struck me profoundly regarding outreach with his sannyasis is he said, you should have due respect for people in the world, not kind of think, oh, I'm so knowledgeable and you are not, or I am religious and you're not, I'm a devotee, you're not. But he said, give due respect to everyone. And he gave a very beautiful talk. It was published. And he said, we should give honor to everybody. He quoted 2 verses. He said, the worshipful mantra of the Brajabasis is Yogamaya mantra, Katyani Mahamaya, Mahayogini Deshwari, Nanda Gopasutam Devi Patim Me Kurute Namaha. And then he quoted the Gopishwar Mahadev verse, Vrindavana Avanipate. And he said, we should go out in the world and give honor and respect to everybody. And so I think that helps, having a mood of respect and honor for different people's traditions. And in general, I'm trying to go in that direction. I've been doing a lot of traveling and public events with my godbrothers. We've been all around the world recently. So a lot of travel. I'm kind of like, it's like 2 a.m. my time right now because I just got back from Europe. And, it's always helpful to be with the congregation, to be with devotees. I think sometimes, though, we get too insular and, we're building our own societies and forgetting that we're in society. And it's the duty of a devotee who is in the service of the ministry to be out with the public and to meet them where they're at and to discuss Bolo Krishna, Bhaja Krishna, Koro Krishna Shiksha, discuss the teachings of Krishna and the practice of bhakti, the experience of Krishna consciousness. So I'm trying to go in that direction.
Yeah. I think also about the balance between what Prabhupada said, boiling the milk, and then also the outreach, and also preaching to oneself, perfecting oneself, or becoming Krishna conscious oneself, and then making others Krishna conscious. What do you think about where's the balance lie there?
Sometimes I feel like, if you boil the milk or only boil the milk, when do you know it's burfy? And, if you keep going, it might get burnt.
That's a good point.
And also, there's no problem making more milk if you're able to take care of it, but you also don't want to water it down. There's a story of a king who asked all the citizens to fill up this pond with milk. He excavated an area and he wanted them all to bring it and fill it with milk. And in the morning time he came and it was just water. It was just white, liquid, not even white. And he thought, what happened? And they all thought, oh, the other person will bring milk. Everyone just brought water. So there are many kinds of bhakti there, but ultimately bhakti is one thing. It's pure. It's Shuddha. It's the natural relationship between the soul and Krishna, Bhagavan. And so if we're genuinely sharing the pure message of our Guru Varga, then you make more milk. There's a story of a guru and his disciple, and the guru gave him divine knowledge when he took his herd of cows from 10 to 1,000 in some years, and then he gave him divine knowledge. So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita it said, Prana Chejar Sehetu Prachar, where there's life force, you can preach. And it said, Krishna Shakti Vina Nahitar Pravartam. Without Krishna's Shakti, it's not possible. So it's an organic process, and we're faced with the challenge of caring for the needs of ultimately the devotees. It's very important. That's why to always remember we're in service in the role of a teacher, like a sannyasi. We are always a servant. I think that's a very important meditation. That's something I'm focusing on. Whether we're a leader or a sannyasi or a GBC, we're all servants. And the devotees are actually are objects of honor and respect and even devotion. Krishna says, those who are the devotees of my devotees are my real devotees. So I think remembering that, serving the devotees and serving people, that's very important.
We were also talking earlier about how you would like to kind of stress the experience of Krishna consciousness more than, let's say, an institutional or societal framework or something like that. Tell us more about that.
I've been focusing on sharing with people about Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teaching of Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva. And for those who aren't aware of the term, perhaps Achinta means inconceivable. Bhed Abhed means oneness and difference. And I feel that's important to build more awareness in the world about what it means to be a Hare Krishna and a Bhakti yogi. Bheda Bheda actually is predating the Advaitavad conception in the Vedantic traditions. It's been shown through different research.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And so it's a very natural, intuitive thing, actually. If you think about it, it's just kind of makes sense. To say that everything is all one, the soul and God and this world, everything is one, is kind of a sentimental oversimplification.
And
it's
quite popular.
Yeah, it's popular because it's like sentimental, oh, we're all God, we're all one, love, peace. But actually, why I'm focusing on this teaching is because I believe it's very important. People think of Hinduism and Sanatan Dharma generally as two sides. There's the monist side that we're ultimately one, without any difference, and the side that says, no, we're ultimately distinct. But Mahaprabhu taught that actually the relationship between the Atma and Bhagavan, the soul and God, is inseparable. And that's why the experience of prema ultimately is what leads to what he calls the oneness of heart. I've been studying this from the quotes of Swami Prabhupada and my Srila Gurudev. And that's what I talk about when I mean experience. So how do we go from, okay, it's a teaching, a tattva, to experiencing that? And that's through the process of bhakti. And if you look at the teachings of Mahaprabhu, it was very clear that he was leading people towards that. Instead of just having, okay, this is our religion. And before, it's also in terms of bhakti ras and bhakti. Before it was, okay, you're the soul, there's God, you should worship God, respect God. It wasn't about experiencing a personal relationship. But Mahaprabhu said, no, Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva means actually without coming together in our relationship with God and meeting Krishna and experiencing our unique rasa with him, we're never going to be happy. And so a lot of religions teach you to respect God and be separate, be dualists. But we say, no, actually, without developing a oneness of heart through a relationship of love, we won't ultimately be happy. And so in our mission, we're focusing on that and going towards the experience of it through application of the teachings of Mahaprabhu. Primarily, we see as Nam Sankirtan. And there's some verses that are very dear to me that take us in that direction. But, we can talk about anything you like.
You don't think that the oneness of everything is more attractive than seeing because when you're saying that, okay, there's a oneness in heart and we can connect with Krishna through bhakti, that's really nice, but doesn't it seem easier for in this day and age for people to relate with that everything's just one? Or in your experience with talking to people, have you noticed
it's
that?
A question of it's like many things are easy. It's easy to go to hell. The idea is what's easy isn't necessarily what's best. And I don't think it's actually ultimately easier. I think it's just that there's not proper education. Mm-hmm. It's just, in reality, like I said, it's oversimplification. It's like, okay, 1 + 1 = 1. There's a story. And it's people like the idea of being God ultimately. No one to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
And it's great. Everyone, yeah, of course, I'm God. Fantastic. In reality, do you have godly powers and so forth? But there's a story of Adi Shankar ji, which is a sweet story because we respect him. But one time his mother asked him to go bring brinjal, eggplant from the garden. And she said, go bring brinjals. I need to cook a sabji. So he came back with one. And she said, no, I need many. And he came back with one. and she said, I told you to bring many. He said, I only found one. And she said, she twisted his ear and took him to the garden and said, look, there's so many. And he walked up and down the rows of eggplants and said, look, one. It's all one. He said, okay, but collect many ones and you'll have many. So, we can say 1 + 1 = 1, but that's like childish ultimately. Okay, so it's easy for a child to say, oh, this is the truth, but it doesn't make it the truth. Right. So I would say, the truth itself, Bhakti Prabhupada would say, Vox Populi is not Vox Dei, and in general, Vox Populi is generally wrong. It's never complete. The complete truth is something that's realized, and then you have to be a realized soul. So we talk about truth. Everyone's talking about truth, and it's all relative truth, and real truth is ultimately when you realize it, this is the truth. And so the realization of the process, I think it's a really beautiful thing. As soon as you have time to give the message, and those who are looking for a personal connection, who are looking for love, it actually is so beautiful to understand that I am inseparable. My relationship with God, He is my eternal companion. The super soul is always with me. Throughout millions of lifetimes, He's always there. And I just have to look towards Him. And I do that through remembering. I do that through chanting the name, through building, through receiving the grace and the power through His holy name, that I'm present. And I can develop a relationship of love, which is natural. I'm seeking for love in this world, but I'm missing out through ignorance, and through attachment, and through being trapped in this samsara. So it's actually a very beautiful process. And also, when I speak with people about Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva, most people I meet, they can relate with it. Unity University, it's an obvious thing. And especially in the modern world, Unity University it actually just makes sense.
Yeah.
And one thing about Mahaprabhu said it's achintya, it's inconceivable. But there's a process. Why he says achintya? Because ultimately, through the experience, you realize. Otherwise, it's just, we're all stuck in conceptualizing things.
Yeah.
But we want to go to a practical realization. That's why it said you approach the Tattvadarshi, the realized soul, and you follow the process of bhakti. And it's all sastra, actually, if you properly study all sastra, instead of just cherry pick a few verses, it's very evident that that's the reality of Achinta Bheda Bheda Tattva. If you truly study the scripture, Shruti, Smriti, Ved, Puran, Upanishad, Gita, Bhagavat, you'll come to that conclusion. But ultimately, we want to go from the theoretical conception to the application of the process. And it said that verses 35 to 38 of Brahma Samhita. First, it talks about Achinta Bheda Bheda. Ekopya Sora Chaitam Jagaranda Kotiyat Shaktirasti Jagaranda Chayanta Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindamadi Purusha. That actually all the universes reside within the form of the Lord, and He resides at the center of every atom. Through His energy, He's expanding into everything. And then the next verse says, Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manujastatayava Samprapya Rupa Mahimasa Niyana Bhusha Sukteryameva Nigamai Prataistu Vainti Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhavajami. That through the process of kirtan, offering prayers, and then we can achieve Samprapya Rupa Mahimasa Niyana Bhusha. Swami Prabhupada writes in his commentary that this means you develop your rasa with Krishna, that your relationship in friendship and parental mood and conjugal mood. And then Rupya Mahimasana, your spiritual identity, and so on and so forth, your Swarup Siddhi. So he talks about that. It's about an experience. Bhakti in general, it's like, okay, I love God, but I'm happy here in this world. I worship God for material benefit or for so many things, or okay, liberation, moksha. Mahaprabhu said moksha is also cheating. He said, ultimately, Dharma Artha Kama Vancha Rishab. Dharma Artha Kama Moksha Vancha. In Chaitanya Charitamrita said this is cheating. He said, no, that goal of life is spiritual. Real mukti means Swarupena vivastiti, this Bhagavatam, to achieve your spiritual identity through the process of this sadhana. And then the next verse, 37, these 4 verses just blows your mind. I meditate and teach, do a guided meditation on these verses, going from I consciousness to you consciousness to we consciousness to world consciousness to universal consciousness to Krishna consciousness. And it's a magical process. As soon as you lose your individual identity, then life becomes meaningless. You lose self. What's the point of anything then? But Krishna consciousness isn't the loss of identity. It's the realization of true relationship and your ultimate identity. And so how do we do that process? Through kirtan, but then the verse 37 is all about the glories of Srimati Radhika. Ananda chinmaya rasa pratibhavi tabi stabhiri eva nijrupate kalavi golok eva nivasatya kilatmabhutam govindamadi purusham, describes the glories of Srimati Radhika and her transcendental energies, who is non-different from Krishna, Swarup Shakti. And then the next verse, I was actually giving these meditations, and then I studied these verses and saw that it was really beautifully lining up. So the next verse is also extremely beautiful, verse 38. And for me, this is the crux of the Chinta Beta Beta topic. So the 38 says, Premanjana Trita Bhakti Vilochanenya Shanta Shadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokyanti Yang Shamasundaram Achinte Gunaiswarupam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. That ultimately the goal is Krishna Prem, pure love. And that is what gives you darshan, or true revelation of Krishna. Yang Shamasundaram Achinte Gunaswarupam. Mahaprabhu brought back Brahma Sanghita and gave it to the devotees. He said, make it like a necklace. Brahma Sanghita, Krishna Karnamrita. And Krishna Karnamrita goes straight into pure love of God and the relationship between the Braja Gopis and Krishna. But Achintya Guna Swarupam, that inconceivable form, the Supreme Lord is inconceivable. How can you understand God? You can't. You can experience relationship, enter your rasa, and then you can understand and realize according to the degree of your relationship. Just like Srimati Radhika, her knowledge of Krishna is much higher than a rishi, a sage, who realizes Paramatma in the heart. So for me, this is the crux of the issue with the Chinta Beta Beta. Mahaprabhu said it's a Chinta inconceivable without relationship. And so you follow a sadhana to experience it, and you have to go into Bhakti Ras. And therefore Rupa Goswami and all the Goswamis and our Guru Varga teach us sadhana bhakti so that we can go towards Bhav Bhakti and Prem Bhakti. And that's what's important in life. So for me, teaching about preaching is really about, okay, there's what's good for society, Vanashram Dharma, rules and regulation, fertile field, environment, to which the individual souls, the jivas, can develop. And that's really the aim, the individual achieving total, not just emancipation, but Swarup Siddhi. That's the real goal, a perfection of the spiritual identity, and not getting lost in the weeds of the ecclesiastical, doctrinal, fights, who gets to vote on what Siddhanta. It's a process, it's a relationship between the soul and Krishna. That's why you see the lotus in the pond, that's the guru. Lotus is the soul, the sun is God. So really the essential relationship is between guru, the shishya, and Krishna. Everything else is just how to maintain some stability in society, institutions and structures and so forth. But the real relationship is between the student, the teacher, and God himself, and the teacher in a bona fide line, sampradaya, who's truly following Krishna, who's the original guru. Then that's a bona fide relationship, and in that system, jiva can get emancipation, Swarup Siddhi. So for me, the focus should be on how to create a favorable environment where devotees can practice. Sadhu Sangha is necessary, temples are necessary, everything is necessary. But really, we should try to help the individuals in their individual process, realizing their unique relationship as souls in their relationship with Krishna.
There are groups that mix maybe Mayavad and Bhakti that we were speaking about previously. Is that necessarily wrong? Because in the external viewpoint, they're doing the same things. Like you're saying, sadhana, chanting the holy names and following guru, and basically what we might call Sanatan Dharma, practicing vegetarianism and all those things. Is there merit in that? Or is it or are you speaking about something more specific?
Krishna says, Yajantya Vidhi Purvakam. So everyone is ultimately following Krishna's path, whatever religion. All yagyas are accepted by Krishna. He's the only God. right? Bhoktaram Jagya Tapasam. So any kind of sadhana performed by any kind of sadhaka, practitioner, ultimately is going to Krishna. But yajantya vidipurvaka means it may be done not according to the proper religious principles, in which case it may not lead you to the highest result in a very good time frame, comparatively speaking, as doing it directly.
Right.
So Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada also talks about the need of having the Jagat Guru and the Mahanta Guru. And he says, if you're able, you go, you climb up to Gangotri and take the Ganga water directly, but not everyone can. Sri Madhvacharya went and met with Sri Vyasadeva directly. Not everyone can. So Mahanta Guru is someone who connects you to the unbroken Sampradaya. Now, if you're not connected to a bona fide Sampradaya, then your process is a vidipurvakam, without any proper structure. And so it's like, all right, there's some amount of fool's gold versus real gold. What's the difference? Okay, if you could say if there's faith and so on, then the process is fine. But if there's genuine philosophical deviations, it's not according to Guru Sadhu Sastra, then ultimately the sadhakas will not be able to properly advance. And so they'll have to come into higher association in due course. And the deviation may be in their own desire, in their own mentality. If the gurus are teaching that I am God, some gurus teach, this is not, in a Vaishnav line, but he says, I have not come here to teach you I am God. I've come to teach you that you are God. We're all God. So that's people who are coming to that for that, then their chanting of Krishna's name isn't going to help them, because their desire, their aim is wrong.
Right.
So helping them means, what do you want? You want to, real Advaitavad is a very rigorous process. Krishna says in chapter 12, Gita, Klesho Dikataraste Samavyakta Shakta Chetasam. There's a genuine Advaitavad path to merge in the absolute, but it's very difficult.
Yeah. And
even they follow bhakti. But a lot of it, it's like, people like to make general, they don't like to give refined siddhanta because it's easier to attract followers, and, it's also, okay, if you say that you're God, or you put on that kind of worship display, then maybe you can attract more followers, but sincere people will Krishna ultimately does accept the sincere offering of devotees.
Playing devil's advocate, when you say connected to a genuine sampradaya, when you talk to Madhvas, they won't say that we are a part of their sampradaya because we have a different philosophy. But yet we say Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya. So the Gaudiya Sampradaya itself, we can say the same thing about that. Oh, you're not connected to a bona fide sampradaya.
It's actually just a form of illiteracy.
What do you mean?
The people who are saying that don't know. That's the truth. Mahaprabhu's disciple of Srila Ishvara Puripad, disciple of Sri Madhavendra Puripad, and that's directly connected to Madhva line. Direct.
Right.
Our Gurudev wrote a beautiful article about that. It's just a lack of education.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing to say is that, the truth and the not truth, you may think they're competing, but actually they're not. Truth is just the truth. Non-truth is just non-truth.
Yeah.
Ultimately, in the ultimate conception, there's no competition. Nirgun Tattva is not in competition with the three modes of nature. The transcendental reality is not, you may cover the sun with clouds, but the sun is not covered. Our perception is covered, limited.
Yeah.
So the sun is always shining. So all these different confusion, all these different things in Kali Yuga, this is very natural, but it's also very temporary. In Bhagavatam, Krishna says, Kalena nasta pralaya to Uddhava. He said, in time, things are lost, but really ultimately he comes again and establishes Dharma. So there are many levels of Dharma. That's an interesting topic, but ultimately, the world is full of nonsense. That's the truth. The world is full of relative truths and people masquerading, the truth in the name of the truth. And so that's just nature.
Yeah. When you talk to people to share Krishna consciousness, there's a certain conception that people have of Hare Krishnas. And the conception is, robes, chanting in the street. Are you trying to change now what the conception, kind of what we were talking about at the table, a new way of looking at what devotees are, or what kind of, like what you said, mimification, that we want to make towards what the public sees?
I think quality education that is actually not just accessible, but easy to understand for people is important. And that should be done, like in the style of Bhakti Bandhav Swami Prabhupada or Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada. He spoke bhakti to the general public as it is.
Yeah.
And it seems in general like a lot of indirect preaching is going on to the public, and then to the devotees direct preaching. I think it's important to have direct preaching to the public and to establish the real conception. And what I say, it's nowadays people's attention span, so on, is very short. We have too many books. I tell people, we do classes twice a day. Christians do classes once a week, and there's, how many? 3 billion Christians. Why? Because it's a simple message repeated over and over and over and over and over. So I think simplifying, giving the essential tenets of our faith and sharing it so that people who identify with that, who resonate with that, who aspire for that, can understand and participate. So it's not about, okay, this is what we do as our external role. Okay, and Nam Sankirtan is who we are. Why would we want to change that? Book distribution and so on. But people should know, oh, this is what they believe. These are the core tenets of what it means to be a Hare Krishna. And that should be, people know what it means to be a Christian.
Yeah.
People know what it means to be a Buddhist. If you were to ask people, what does it mean to be a Hare Krishna? What would they say? People don't have much understanding.
Yeah.
So I think that's, it should be done in a very effective, continuous manner that works with the attention span of people.
1 minute elevator pitch of what Hare Krishnas are.
Okay, here I am.
Putting you on the spot, but
every soul. So before I do the elevator pitch, well, I guess this can be part of it. There are levels of Dharma. That means truth and how we relate with truth. And there's how it deals with society in this world. Ultimately, we're practicing the truth that is related to the soul and God directly. Atma Tattva, Atma Dharma, and Bhagavat Dharma. And there are levels of that up to Prem, divine love. Our process is to realize your relationship of divine love with the absolute truth on the spiritual plane, in a direct relationship with him, and also to live it in this life, and it will improve your life pretty much at every level. It'll help you in society, with your family, and so on and so forth. But ultimately, that's all temporary, part of samsara, material existence.
Yeah.
Really, how do we realize our relationship as a soul with the absolute truth in a personal way? And it gives great experience of happiness, bliss, because ultimately, to be separate from God means to be suffering. I really feel like Dharma ultimately is there to bring us closer to God. Adharma is what takes us away. So if we understand it in that conception, everything that takes me farther away from God is not proper. It's adharmic, against the truth. And so we're trying to come closer.
I really like that. I like the point of getting people to have that experience, because that's really relatable. It's real, first of all. When you have that experience, it's real. And also that it's the relationship that you can have on that absolute, on that higher plane. That's also very relatable too. That there's planes, there's like levels to life, not just the gross level of material enjoyment, material energy, but on a higher level, you can experience some type of pleasure on the higher level as well.
Yeah, we're all searching for happiness. Also, one nice thing about Sanatan Dharma, because that's a general umbrella term for real Hinduism, and there's over a billion Hindus, right? Yeah. So Sanatan Dharma, and then we go Bhagavat Dharma and Prem Dharma, and that's really, what Mahaprabhu taught. That means ultimately the religion of the soul is to develop love for God. And our Gurudev would say, if we're only focusing on morality and brotherhood of man, it becomes a form of cheating ultimately, because the essence is lost. And the material world is always full of exploitation. So he said it becomes a brotherhood of thieves, because the material world is on the basis of exploitation.
Wow.
So morality, let's have a good society. People think we can create a society of perfect equity. It's a fantasy. It's an ideal that can't be realized. The material world is based off exploitation, but on a karmic level, there's equity. You sow what you reap on the karmic level, but we can't manipulate that by human means. So the point is that ultimately, one of the beauties I would say of Sanatan Dharma is that it's something that's practiced and it's a way of life. It's realized. And you go to the mandir, you see Vigraha. I was thinking the other day that, an atheist will argue to you about God, and an atheist will say God doesn't exist. A theist says God does exist. But a devotee knows God exists. They don't have doubt. They go to the mandir and see Krishna, and they offer him a garland, they offer him food stuff, they take his prasad. Every part of their life, they're chanting his mantra, his name in the morning. They're connected, the name and God are one. So the beauty of bhakti and Sanatan Dharma is that it's practical in the very moment, and right now, you see in the culture how they have this relationship, this experience, and it's very sweet. Whether they're worshiping Krishna as a baby, Gopal, with Shri Radha, with the cowherd boys, Gornitai, and so forth. It's something that I never felt like Krishna's far away, especially when you're with very high-class Vaishnavas. I would say for me, it's not about, I have some realization. It's about you meet the sadhus, the real Guru and Vaishnavas who have that. You can see it in their life, how they're tasting the rasa, the sweetness of relationship with Krishna, and it's energizing them, and they're always engaged in service, and it's beautiful. The atmosphere becomes surcharged with the transcendental energy. And so on one hand, it's a almost kind of transcendental activity that we can't see, feel, hear, touch. But I would say actually on the practical level, it's immediate. Prabhupada would say, someone asked him, this was in a talk, Swami Prabhupada, when can we see Krishna? When can we be free of all sin, this and that? And Prabhupada said, 1 minute. And then he said, 1 moment. And he said the verse, Sarva Dharman Prityaja, Amtam Sarva Papiva Mokshe Shami, you surrender. And then immediately. And so it's those who are in the association with Swami Prabhupada or Gurudev, it's something you feel connected in that moment. And one quality of the bona fide gurus is that they don't keep themselves ultimately as the object of worship, although they are the bridge, but they teach us about the Supreme Person himself.
That's so important.
Yeah. And so that's where you get mixed up in the Mayavad Bhakti mix. The Guru himself becomes the ultimate object of worship more than God himself.
When you said there's Sanatan Dharma, then there's Bhagavat Dharma and Prem Dharma, can you explain those two terms?
Sanatan Dharma actually is Bhagavat Dharma and is Prem Dharma. The religion of the soul is love for God. That's the real religion.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Sanatan Dharma can include, Advaitavad, we're trying to merge into the light of the absolute. Varnashram Dharma is included. That means rules for a good society. But the purpose of a good society is to allow individuals to grow towards the highest point. So in regular Dharma, we say, we need to practice truth. We need to practice discipline. We need to practice compassion. We need to practice cleanliness, purity. This creates a good society. And so that's important. That's part of Sanatan Dharma. Then Mahaprabhu said, Eta sab chadi vanashram dharma kinchan loy krishnaika sharan. Give up all vanashram dharma and take one pointed shelter of Krishna. So what to do? So as we go up in levels of education, we come to different stages of life and understanding what one person should not give up. For one person to give up vanashram dharma would be adharmic, against religion. But for another person to not give it up would be adharma. It's like you're going up on an elevator and you say, no, I want to be on the ground floor. No, the purpose is to go up. Blossom the divine consciousness through the process of bhakti. That's the real purpose. So really, Sanatan Dharma is the whole framework. But the purpose is that, that's why the Bhagavatam begins, the ripened fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge. So the tree of Vedic knowledge is there to create the fruit. And the fruit is prem, divine love in your relationship with Krishna. A gardener who has a mango orchard is not going to be happy if it doesn't produce mangoes, right? Yeah. And so the purpose of Sanatan Dharma is that the individuals will come to the ripened stage of love of God through the process of taking shelter of Hari Guru Vaishnav, Guru Sadhu Sastra. That's the goal. So we don't want to create any block in that process. How can that natural process develop? How can we support people? And therefore, all those levels are necessary. But if we only remain on Vanashram Dharma, it's described to be like clearing a jungle to build a house, but then never building the house, the jungle grows back. Our Gurudev would say like that. Wow. Okay, you cleared an area to build your house very nicely, and then you left it for 10 years and you came back. You have to do it again. So you clear the jungle, Vanashram Dharma, build the structure, and develop your bhakti. So the goal is the growth of the individuals, and you create a stable society for that. Therefore, rules and regulations are important and necessary.
Yeah.
But Raghunath Das Goswami, what did he say? Na dharmam, na adharmam. And what also is the scriptures say? Dharma sunustipa pungsa vishvakshena katasya nodpadya didiratim shrameva kevalam. Dharma is useless labor. You may do all the dharmic activities for eternity, but if it does not lead to attraction to the Lord through hearing about him, then it's all useless labor. So it takes a proper analysis through study from our masters to understand the purpose, the true aim. And if we think that the aim is only these things, a stable society, for what? For animal life?
Yeah.
Human life without Bhagavat Dharma is animal life. It said, Har nidra bhaya maitunaichad. Dharmena hina pashubi samana. It's just animal life. So anyhow.
Yeah, I mean, I think
animals.
I think the modern.
Where's my Bible?
I think the modern Sanatan Dharma idea is that what you're saying about just morality and getting along with others and loving your neighbor and things like that. But that Prem Dharma, Bhagavat Dharma takes it to another level. And I think sometimes I just say whatever. I don't know, for some reason, a lot of like Sanatan Dharma stuff shows up on my Instagram, like from India, like people who are giving classes about it and things like, kind of very gung-ho, anti, Islam, pro-Hindu stuff. And yeah, they don't really talk so much about love of God or even how to get there. It's mostly just that kind of base level stuff.
There is a God, good, and he's on my side.
Right.
That's not Sanatan Dharma.
Right.
Sanatan Dharma is not Hinduism. It's not Buddhism. It's not Islam. It's not Christianity. Sanatan Dharma is no material label. It's eternal. So when did Hinduism, these are all labels we put on things, but Bhagavat Dharma means sarvupadi vinirmuktam. After you've become free of any material designation, then you can practice bhakti. And so it said, Dharma jata nama chale, Bhagavat kahi paripurna chale. Whatever is going on in the name of religion and society, the Bhagavat says is complete cheating. Dharma projita kaita votra paramo nirmat.
That first verse, where's that from?
CC says that, it's
Okay.
Chaitanya Charitamrita, but it's based off the second verse of Bhagavatam.
Right.
Dharma projita kaita
Kaita
votra
paramo.
paramo. What is nirmat saratam satam? That's only Bhagavat Dharma, Atma Dharma, Prem Dharma. Bhakti Yoga means the soul and God, the relationship of love. That's real Dharma. Everything else is pretense. And it can serve if it's serving its purpose, but it's not the ultimate aim.
I love that so much because we can get so caught up in the weeds of things, whether it's philosophical differences that we might have with others of the same family, religion-wise, like in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And this, what you're saying, just brings it all to just a really like high level, and the highest level, not just high level in the way of that unifies us, but it's actually the highest level as well. It's just like the highest thing that we're talking about. So I know we were talking about this earlier about how important is it to have the ecclesiastical part, institutional part, as opposed to kind of just that idea of this is the highest thing, we're just preaching this and that's it.
I think especially in this day and age, people crave structure. People need structure. Family is a structure. Building is a structure. We prefer to live in homes.
Yeah.
Some people, if you're a sannyasi, nomadic, you may be able to live, in America, it's very difficult. In India, it's a little bit easier. In America, you're just called homeless. In India, you're called sadhu. And people respect you. I was sitting in the airport, we were sitting in the airport just yesterday, and someone came up and gave us a bag of like food. Oh, here's some banana, here's some water, here's some juice. Why? Because
like an Indian person? Yeah.
And they invited me to the World Hindu Congress. So
wow.
Did you see this, G? Krishna. So anyhow, the point is that for most people, you need structure. It's like, okay, to be educated, to develop, it's helpful. Order is better than anarchy.
Yeah.
chaos. And so the institution has a place, the structures have a place, but we don't want to forget that we're servants to something greater, especially in a religious context. I understand, like in a government context and so on, okay, it's kind of a material system, and so you can have a boss and so on. But actually the true traditional religious societies where they would have governments, you can have a pluralistic society. The government can't get involved in, controlling religion. So having a official state religion is not really advisable in Kali Yuga. But saying that, if you look, even as recently as Srila Narottam Das Thakur, Shyamananda Prabhu, and Srinivasacharya established Vaishnavism as the state religion with Birhambir king. Instituted Ekadashi, everyone followed Ekadashi, or, hey, fine, you didn't follow Ekadashi. So, that's there. I don't think in Western society that's really our end game necessarily, because it's who gets to control the levers, So my opinion in general is that being said, structure is good, everything is good, plate is good, but the food's most important. So a structure is giving you a plate, but what's on the plate? What's the food? Is the food good? Is it cooked properly? Is it pure, impure? Is it poisoned? Same thing with a well. You need a well to get water, but is the well good water, pure or not? Is it have contaminants, bacteria that's going to cause you sickness? It's my personal opinion that what we should focus on really is, we have the process already, and it's actually, Guru Sadhu Sastra. And that's really the basis of a proper ecclesiastical order. Not so much a system where we vote about, I think with Swami Prabhupada, it was very important for him to establish the governing body and a management structure. And you can see the results. It's hard to say what caused what. Ultimately, the preachers who have true faith and inspiration and inspire other people, then you build temples. It's not having you can look at it in team sports, okay, having a good owner, having a good coach, but ultimately it's the players, it's the people who that actually make the difference. And the structure is also important. So ultimately, I believe it's really the devotees, Basically, how I see it is, first emphasis should be on service of the individuals of the society. Individuals should serve the community as a whole, but the community's purpose is to serve the individuals. In U.S. terms, we're not servants of the government. Government serves the people. The people are connected to God directly. Common law ultimately is the relationship between the soul and God. And material structures, when demons basically come and influence them, they want to replace God, or at least be, the ceiling that you can't go through,
unless you
worship them first.
Right.
Hiranyakashipu basically comes to worship me if you want to get close to God.
Yeah.
So basically, the management structure, all these systems are necessary to hold things together. But you should also be careful they don't become the dams and dikes. Bhakti Prabhupada would talk about organized religion like that.
Right.
And he would say it becomes like putana, killing the infants, which is the faith of the individuals who are beginning on the process.
Wow.
That's how he describes it. They become like the ecclesiastical leaders. If they're not genuinely practicing themselves, advancing themselves in a proper mood of service, they become like putana, which is the purpose of putana is coming in the form of a mother, a nourisher, a nurturer, a guardian, and instead just destroying people's faith. So if you're practically not helping people in the development of their faith, then that's a great danger. And so really, Guru Sadhu Sastra means we take shelter of this checks and balance. In government, U.S., we have legislative, judicial, executive branches. We have Guru Sadhu Sastra. Yeah. But what is genuine Guru? What is genuine Sadhu? What is genuine Sastra? It's natural that over time things become perverted. But therefore, Krishna establishes again, great souls come again. Sadhus are not just anyone who wears saffron cloth. Sadhu it's described, Brihad Bhagavatamrita, the gradation of sadhus. Ultimately, Krishna says, Sadhu Krityam, gopis, you are the highest sadhus. And then, Uddhavaji, Yudhisthira Maharaj, Giriraj, these are the Haridasa Varya, the sadhus. And then we have our gurus. What is the nature of a guru? Brahmani Upasamashrayam, and so on and so forth. Everything is defined. And then the Sastra itself, Shruti Smriti. So it's my opinion that the highest ideal for us to take shelter of is that which is transcendental, not material. Anything that's incorporated in a material system is a material thing. A house, it's built by people with material ingredients. And you're registering it in the government. it's my belief that the name of God and the Lord himself, for us, the name of God is the closest we have, right? So the name of God himself, that's the highest. Then the Veda, Shruti Sastra, Smriti Sastra, then our Guru Parampara, then sadhus. That's our real current. And so what happens sometimes with institutions, there are many institutions, over time, they become more and more and more and more. If they become gatekeepers to the soul's, progression, who inhibit the growth rather than cultivate, nurture, care, and so forth, the role of institutions, tiksha, shiksha, nurture, help them advance. Sometimes I think of it like, okay, for example, Brahma Gayatri. In the Brahma Gayatri, what are we praying to? Savitur Varenyam, the sun god, the sun himself. And in this sense, it's referring to the energy of the Lord, Shrimati Radhika and Krishna themselves. Now, if we were to say, okay, instead of praying to Savitur, we're praying to the solar company who sells solar panels.
Yeah.
And, they charge your battery. Okay, we worship you, Tesla, right? That's an institution. And it's taking the energy of the sun. Now, if it's a servant and saying, I'm receiving this energy, I'm packaging it for you, so you can turn on your lights in your house. Okay, good institution. But if it's trying to, replace or say, shut off, or don't have any windows, just use our lights. Yeah. Don't let the natural sun come through. Guru Sadhu Sastra. So over-regulation, especially without the leaders being spiritually advanced, I think the biggest problem in society is unqualified leaders, ultimately. The Sastra says, Bhagavatam says, Guru na sasyat, swajano na sasyat, pita na sasyat, swajano na sasyat. You should not be a mother, a father, a leader, a guru if you cannot deliver your dependents. And so, okay, I'm not a realized soul, I'm not a pure guru. Okay, that means a mother can be a mother if she helps according to her ability and then takes up, right? And so institutions and leaders, we can help according to our ability if we're in that chain of parampara under guidance of Sadhu Guru Sastra. There should always be Shiksha Guru and so forth who has come to a higher stage of bhakti, madhyam, and so forth. Because without that, it tends to revert back to a material system with material purposes. And the goal can go from being the service of the individuals towards the service of the structure, right? That people are meant to, as like customers, to give us money to have, our shareholders. So the institutional leaders become the shareholders, and the people, the congregation becomes, the clients, the customers, and the goal of the entity is to perpetuate the entity.
I mean, in context of ISKCON, there's the quote Prabhupada said, ISKCON is my, I don't know if he said this, ISKCON is my body. So that goes into what you're saying, that it's all it's all in service of Prabhupada's body.
Yes. So Srila Prabhupada's body, then we have to understand what is ISKCON. And this is, I would say it's both things. It's the body, it's the spirit, but ultimately the body is not just the structure he created, it's the connection to the parampara.
Yeah.
So it's established in 1966 by Swami Prabhupada in New York City. But in his books, he also always mentions the parampara. Sri Krishna, Lord Brahma, Sri Narad, Vyas, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So our Gurudev, they were having debates about this, and he said, is Narad Muni a member of ISKCON? Is Haridas Thakur a member of ISKCON? Bhaktivinoda Thakur a member of ISKCON? He's on the parampara. Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada a member of ISKCON? And he would say, yes, ISKCON is eternal. Krishna Bhavanamrita Sangha. It's an eternal Sangha association to help the jiva. So in the Vedic tradition, we have this idea of re-manifesting, excavating, revealing the eternal truth. And we give it different names and labels, but what we focus on is the eternal element.
Yeah.
And what we focus on is that what's more important, that Prabhupada established it in 1966 in New York City, or that he's a pure associate of the Lord, taking jivas across the ocean of samsara to the eternal abode of Vrindavan? What's more important? It's more important is that he established it, but it's also equally important that he is that person taking us across the ocean of samsara. Mm-hmm. So not losing focus on the internal element, and also understanding the importance of that institution to give a facility for jivas. It's like a Royal Navy. So they're building boats, and we should help them, assist them in that process. But in the boat, you still need guru, a good captain, a good leader.
Yeah.
And so why I said that verse, Guru Nasasyat, because I think that ultimately the biggest problem is bad leadership.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about any institution. I'm talking about an idea in general. In Kali Yuga, it's qualified leaders. There's many components of what it means to be a good leader. And it's not just someone who's versed in scripture. It's someone whose character ultimately should be on a high level, someone who should be caring, who should really see. Like we have a saying in our mission that we put people before projects and individuals before institutions. And I think it's these general, we need to create a proper value system and a value structure so we know what's the highest ideal that we can all worship and take shelter of.
Yeah.
And that's not the institution. One time, they were looking for a devotee to give an I name, and someone suggested ISKCON Das, and Prabhupada said no. So that's right.
Really? I didn't know that.
I've read it a few times. So, someone was recommending names. Prabhupada said no. Krishna Bhavan Amrita Sangha, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. What is Krishna consciousness? How do we develop in that? That's eternal, because the parampara is eternal. Evam parampara praptam imam rajarsayo vidu. It's an eternal parampara. And then if you have a Royal Navy, right, the goal is 10,000 years and forth, ISKCON will be the worldwide force, the Hare Krishna movement. And we should understand Srila Prabhupada's place in that as the founder Acharya, the general of Mahaprabhu's army, Lord Nityananda Prabhu's representative, delivering the entire Western world. We understand his position. It's not minimizing, it's actually glorifying him more. We're saying he is the direct embodiment of the mercy of Gaur Nitai. It's said in Chaitanya Charitamrita that Gaur Nitai are rising in the east, and then the golden moon and the golden sun of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda will appear in the west. Nitai Pada Kamala Koti Chanda Shruti. The golden moon of Lord Nityananda and the sun of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will come to the west. How did they come to the west? Who brought them to the west? You can say the sun is traveling, but who is the charioteer? Who are the horses? So Swami Prabhupada is bringing that to the whole world, bringing Jagannath to the whole world, bringing all the jivas now in Kali Yuga for thousands of years. He will be helping people go to the supreme abode.
Beautiful.
And all his disciples helping along that. We see in Jagannath Rath Yatra, all the associates of Jagannath are also there. So I personally feel like we should never minimize the importance of the structure of the institution, but that institution should properly develop leaders, should properly educate, should have proper checks and balance, and ultimately identify as servants of the people. Understand that my goal is to serve people. And there are many systems around how that can be done. If you go to Plato, right, the Republic, his idea was that people should be philosopher kings. The higher you are as a leader, the more you should be renounced from personal gain.
Roger Rishi.
Yeah.
A big topic, hot topic nowadays is that ties in with what you're talking about is the role of guru, whether it's Diksha Guru, women Diksha Gurus, or kind of gatekeeping, who can give, rubber stamping gurus. What would you say is, like you said, it's lined in Shastra, it's lined, it's outlined, and you quoted that verse of what is the characteristic of a guru. So how important is it? Because I see in some ways the institution does have that role to like warn people or whatever that maybe this person is not qualified, but is it their responsibility to do that? Or is it the responsibility on the individual? That's my point. And I think that's a lot of young devotees' point. Like someone like Deva Madhava Prabhu, who's a good friend and very thoughtful in this way. It's that it's not up, like, why are we putting the institution in between that role of the seeker and then the guru? It should be that there's a direct relationship or a direct, access in one way instead of having that gatekeeping that's going on. So what do you think about that?
There's always an ideal situation, but that's not always easy to do. And so ideally, it's like the world is perfect and everyone gets to find a bona fide guru, pure guru, and go back to Godhead in this life.
Yeah.
The real world is not so simple and easy. And so having a structure sometimes is very helpful. What the GBC is doing now, as far as I know, is they're not rubber stamping per se, but they're saying there's no, what do they say? Basically,
no
contest, right?
No contest, kind
something
of,
like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Right. So they're saying no objection.
No objection. That's
right?
what it is. Yeah, yeah.
No objection, Your Honor. It's kind of like when you have a marriage, right? Yeah. Does anyone object?
Does anyone object? Yeah, right.
All right. So this person is going to accept this guru. Anyone object?
I'm really beginning to understand like why they put that in place. Like it's kind of understandable to me.
I personally feel like, wild, wild west is not necessarily like, it's really easy to criticize the system and to want to tear it down. Reform, putting people's feet to the fire, good. But it's like sometimes we have this joke, like, you see like Western, like young university kids, like, like from a West, it's like, oh, tear down society, capitalism is bad, we need communism. And you got people from ex-communist countries that are like, pump the brakes a bit.
Yeah.
You don't understand. It's very easy to tear things down. It's very hard to have good systems. So
right.
I kind of feel like, no objection. There's nothing particularly wrong with that. And ultimately they have responsibility for a large institution. And so, some checks and balance. Our approach would be more like, okay, we have elders in our society. Like even prospective disciples are supposed to be recommended or approved. Right?
Yeah.
Our Gurudev would do like that. He would have somebody, okay, who's recommending you?
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, okay, a disciple needs to be recommended, what to speak of a guru.
Yes.
Ultimately, guru is self-effulgent. So there are times when, like, for example, Swami Prabhupada, who you imagine like, oh, and actually when he was going to take sannyas, he first went to Sri Chaitanya Mat and they wouldn't give him. They said, only if you are subordinate to us, after some time and so on and so forth, and you serve under our mission. And later he went to Bhakti Prigan Keshav Goswami Maharaj, who very happily not only, requested him to take, our Gurudev Srila Narayan Goswami Maharaj, requested him to take sannyas, arranged it, and then Param Gurudev gave him full license, go and preach, initiate, build your mission, fulfill your Guru Maharaj's order. So, but it's kind of like, imagine it's like in university systems, you have professors, emeritus, and so on and so forth. You can say, well, this person has shown good character and so on and so forth. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Ultimately, pure Guru is self-manifest. So you can't regulate it. And sometimes that's why, if there's too much control, then people start their own thing or they start a new faction. And that happens.
What do you mean? I hear that term self-manifest. What does that mean practically? Because it can be that someone is that, but then if they want to work within the society, that the society stifles that.
So we see at the time of Swami Prabhupada, Gaur Govinda Maharaj came and immediately Prabhupada wanted to give him Harinam and Diksha, and then like very soon after give sannyas. And there were some GBC who didn't want it.
Yeah.
And Prabhupada said, you are the young ones. He is actually very senior in Bhakti.
Right.
And so, sometimes there are self-manifest acharyas like that.
Right.
And they don't play by the rules of, organized religion necessarily. And so when it deviates, they would rather just not accept deviation than participate. Famous example with Srila Gaur Govinda Maharaj that he wouldn't, in Gaur Purnima, they were voting on the Jiva Tattva issue.
Right.
And he didn't want to participate and he left this world very shortly after that in Bhakti Prabhupada's in February.
Right.
And so it's somewhere around that time. So the point is, certain things, the responsibility of ecclesiastical order, certain things shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Voting on Siddhanta, ultimate. I personally feel like people are too certain in their conceptions without realization. Once you're realized, you know the truth. Otherwise, there's many levels of relative truth, and you can cherry pick quotations to, validate whatever your belief is. Like in general in society, you can find some great person who said something in one place that, makes you feel right about your opinion. Have you realized it? And so I feel like people are a little bit too certain about their beliefs in general.
Yeah. It's not good to be too certain, lack humility and it's not a good look, I guess. Yeah.
It's a complicated subject, so we're not really like covering in depth.
No, yeah, for sure, but
it's a complicated topic. Kind of our view is think of it more like a university. And gurus are like professors, and there's a principle, right? And there's a code of ethics, and there's a scripture, there's a canon. And so there should be some kind of check and balance, especially in a large movement. Prabhupada wanted, Bhakti Prabhupada and Swami Prabhupada, a more kind of republic system.
Yeah.
Not a fiefdom, not a charyaship where there's one Jagat Guru.
Yeah.
For a worldwide mission, it doesn't really make sense. So to have a worldwide mission, you need some form of constitution, order, organized approach. Otherwise, it's just chaos.
Now, your society or your group that you're a part of is not, it's not like fully in one place or the other. It's not fully like ISKCON, but it's not fully Gaudiya Math, and you're kind of in the middle. Tell us a little bit more about that.
I would say it's in the same garden, same orchard, same species of tree.
Yeah.
There's, even the same tree. And I would say even the same branch. And then there's sub branches that grow. It's just natural evolution.
Yeah.
So, I'm not my grandfather, but I'm coming from my grandfather. I'm not my father, but I'm coming from my father. And so that goes for our society, where what the real Gaudiya Math is, what real ISKCON is, and it is that always. But I would say ultimately each person, each group has its approach and its speciality. Sometimes our teacher says it's like, our Shiksha Guru says, the Jamuna River is there, Ganga River is there, Narmada, Sindhu, Kaveri, and they all have their speciality. When they merge into the ocean, it becomes salty water. So we believe in diversity. That means, I take it in terms of any kind of product, whether you want one kind of computer, one kind of phone, one kind of building structure, one kind of ice cream. So a one flavor approach to the world, a homogenized, pasteurized, there's only one way, becomes a bland world. And so Krishna is the god of variety, Raso Vaisa. So variety is something to honor and cherish. But what we practice is the same. But there's a specialty. It means there's a special mood that is a focus. So that those who aspire for that mood can have a place where there's a focus. And so it can cater to their needs. Mm-hmm. Certain different products cater to people's specific needs. And so that's one thing. Also, it's just because, in a practical sense, our Gurudev wanted to work with ISKCON and be part of ISKCON. He was happy with the idea. They had certain conditions, the Jiva Tattva issue, and certain things like that he didn't agree with. And, ultimately for him to have been subordinate to those who were, 30, 40 years his juniors. Yeah. And, he was a sannyasi at that time for like 50 years. Right. Doesn't really make sense. Same thing with Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj. For him to have become subordinate to, what I believe Swami Prabhupada wanted is to have them as like Shiksha Gurus. And what I've seen from acharyas like that is they don't want to control, they wouldn't stop. Our Gurudev never said, don't have gurus in ISKCON, Swami Prabhupada's disciples. Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj never did that. He supported them doing that. Yeah. He encouraged them. Maybe some people would take from them directly, but for the most part, I think Swami Prabhupada wanted them as Shiksha Gurus. Yeah. And he said like that. Mm-hmm. He asked Narayan Goswami Maharaj, it's on record, to help train my disciples, care for my disciples. Same thing with Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj. So having Shiksha Gurus is good. And they can, especially Shiksha Gurus for GBC type level, because obviously they need a lot of help because it's a very complicated situation. Personally, interpersonally, management is very complicated. Gaudiya Math broke up after Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada, and they adopted a more, I don't know what to call it, but like a feudal approach. Each acharya, each guru, his own mats. Now, the good thing about it is that they all became friendly for the most part over time, except for a core division between Bhag Bazar Mat. They became friendly as god brothers. For the most part, most of them are friendly, and it's very good. But it's still not like one sangha, different mats. Whereas Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada requested people to work together. He said, all under the shelter of Rupa Raghunath, serve together, create a governing structure and so forth. Swami Prabhupada created a model that he was trying to follow the desire of Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada to have that more republic model. And so what we're doing with Bhakta Bandhav is more in that vein. We're not creating like an acharya feudal model where, for a worldwide mission, it doesn't help the natural flow of bhakti necessarily. Like you have someone preaching, imagine Mahaprabhu said every town and village. Yeah. You have someone preaching in China, you have someone preaching in Africa, you have someone preaching in Brazil, all over the world. And they're a charismatic preacher. They're very genuinely practicing bhakti. It's not about charisma, but they're really sincerely practicing. People are inspired. Then why would you tell them, you have to go and meet this guru who's the Pope over in, this area? Yeah. so for a worldwide mission, it kind of makes sense to have a multi-guru approach. So we're adopting more of a multi-guru approach with primary shiksha and, connected to our Bhagavad Parampara, following our Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Swami Maharaj received this title, Bhakta Bandhav, from Param Gurudev in 1947. And also it's in Sastra. So it's kind of being created we're trying to create a synthesis of the approaches where you keep the ideal as the absolute, the transcendental, right? And Guru Sadhu Sastra.
Yeah.
So, it helps over time to refine. We're trying to refine an approach and with a special mood. For us, it's the balance of Vaidhi and Rag is very important, the rules and regulation process, as well as the natural development of love for Krishna. And so everything has its purpose and its place. And ultimately, we are descending from Gaudiya Math and from ISKCON. And a lot of us are Westerners. And the main reason we're not directly just saying we're Gaudiya Math is because we truly see the importance of the central position of Srila Bhaktivinoda Swami Prabhupada in the mission of Mahaprabhu. And in Gaudiya Math, the central position is given to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada, which for us is central position as well. But we're saying, okay, our Gurudev connected us to Swami Prabhupada. Swami Prabhupada, he helped us understand him as a teacher, connect to him, and then Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada. And so that's Bhagavad Parampara. And so Bhagavad Parampara doesn't end with Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada. It doesn't end with Bhaktivinoda Swami Prabhupada, and it doesn't end with Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Swami Maharaj. So for us, it makes sense to have a connection to the Bhagavad Parampara, and for us that means our Srila Gurudev, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayana Swami Maharaj, then Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada as the prominent acharya. For us, like we're servants of Swami Prabhupada and servants of his mission. That's our conception. Our Gurudev would say, I am trying to serve ISKCON. I'm trying to be part of ISKCON. We're not able to necessarily be part of the structure of the body, but we're trying to serve the spirit and honor and serve the structure as well. So it's a very long, complicated subject matter. Ultimately, we serve and honor all. In our temple in Vrindavan, 3-4 times a year, we send boga, donations, gifts for Thakurji, cloth, to all the temples. And we feed everyone from every mat, not just ISKCON and Gaudiya Math, but also Babajis, sadhus, anyone. Yeah. So it's not about ultimately labels. Ultimately, we identify. That's why I talk about Prem Dharma. So Bhakta Bandhav is the name of our Gurudev and it's the name of Krishna in Sastra. Krishna says, I am Bhakta Bandhav. So, there's deep meaning behind all those things. But really, Prem Dharma means we're all followers of Lord Chaitanya. He taught Prem Dharma, means the religion of love, connecting the soul with Krishna. And so that's really what we identify as, and it's something that unites us all. Achinta Beta Beta Tapa means we're one and different. So we are Gaudiya Math, we are ISKCON, we are who we are. Right.
Great. Well,
I give long answers, I'm sorry.
No, it's beautiful. I think there's so much to unpack there, Maharaj, and I really appreciate you coming in your busy schedule to talk with me here on the Namarasa podcast. So if you want to get in touch with Rasikananda Maharaj, he actually has a really nice YouTube channel with a lot of his content, his classes that will really inspire you. I'm going to put that channel in the description. But with that, thank you again, Maharaj, for joining me.
If anybody wants to get involved, get in touch.
And if you are in the New York area, please do visit their project in Ellenville, New York. It's about an hour and a half from where I am. So I'm in northern New Jersey. It's such a beautiful property, such beautiful devotees, such a beautiful mood, as you can kind of understand from what Maharaj was talking about. And the prasadam is just always phenomenal. And I just love mostly the mood of all the devotees. They're really captured my family's heart and my heart. And so we'd love to go there when we can and associate with the devotees, associate with Maharaj. And so I'll also put that link in the description if you want to get more information there. Thank you again, Maharaj. Really appreciate it.
Pranams to all the devotees, to you and your family, to our Guru Varga. Haribol.
Hare Krishna. Thanks everyone for listening. Please like, subscribe.
Jai. Namarasa podcast ki jai. Haribol. Very happy you're back on.
Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare